September 1944. Somewhere in eastern France, a 23-year-old former auto mechanic from Ohio sat inside a Sherman tank weighing 33 tons. His name was Eddie Kowalski. Just 4 months earlier, he had been fixing Chevrolets in his uncle's garage in Cleveland. He could rebuild an engine blindfolded. He understood machines the way a surgeon understands the human heart, but nothing in Cleveland had prepared him for what German intelligence had placed directly in his path. 92 Tiger tanks, the most feared armored weapon of the Second World War, each one weighing over 55 tons, each armed with an 88mm cannon capable of destroying a Sherman from more than a mile away. At that range, the Sherman's 75mm gun could barely scratch the Tiger's front armor. The math was brutal. One Tiger destroyed roughly 4 Shermans before being knocked out. 92 Tigers meant the potential destruction of nearly 400 American tanks and more than 1,500 American lives. On paper, the result seemed inevitable. Patton's advance should have stopped right there in the fields of eastern France. But 72 hours later, the battlefield looked very different. Most of those Tigers were burning wrecks, and a young mechanic from Cleveland had helped make it happen. To understand why Germany risked such a massive deployment of heavy tanks, you have to understand the situation in France during late summer 1944. The Allied invasion at Normandy on June 6 had finally cracked open Hitler's fortress Europe. But the real shock for German commanders came after Normandy. For weeks, the fighting in the hedgerow country had been slow and brutal. American infantry advanced yard by yard. Tanks were destroyed faster than factories could replace them. Then on July 25th, everything changed. Operation Cobra shattered the German defensive lines west of St. Lo. Through that gap surged General George Patton's Third Army. And Patton did not advance slowly. He exploded across France. American armored columns drove 30 miles in a single day, sometimes 50. Cities expected to resist for weeks fell in hours. German divisions trying to organize defensive lines suddenly found themselves surrounded before they could even dig foxholes. By mid-August, the German army in France was collapsing. The Falaise pocket trapped tens of thousands of German soldiers. Paris was liberated, and Patton kept moving east toward Germany itself. The speed stunned even experienced German commanders. Officers who had fought on the Eastern Front admitted that Patton's advance felt faster and more chaotic than anything they had seen against the Soviet Union. The casualties told the story. In August alone, Germany lost more than 300,000 soldiers in the West. Entire formations disappeared. Maps at German headquarters became outdated faster than staff officers could update them. Something dramatic had to stop Patton's momentum, and German planners believed they had the perfect weapon: the Tiger tank. The Tiger was legendary for a reason. Weighing more than 55 tons, it carried armor that Allied guns struggled to penetrate. Its 88mm cannon was devastating. It could destroy a Sherman tank at distances exceeding 1 mile. The Sherman's gun could rarely penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor unless the distance was extremely close. American tank crews knew this reality well. Many had watched Tigers destroy entire formations of Shermans in minutes. For soldiers inside a Sherman, encountering a Tiger often felt like a death sentence. And now, German command planned to deploy 92 of them at once. The operation had a simple goal: stop Patton, stop the Third Army. Buy time for Germany to reorganize the collapsing Western Front. 3 defensive lines of Tigers would block Patton's advance. The first line would destroy the leading American armor. The second would stop any breakthrough. The third would counterattack and seal the gap. Supported by infantry, artillery, and anti-tank guns, the formation looked unstoppable. On paper, the plan was flawless. But the Germans overlooked something important. Their enemy was not just a group of tanks. It was an army full of soldiers learning fast, including one mechanic who saw something most officers missed. Eddie Kowalski had joined the army in 1943, He did not consider himself a hero. He was simply good with machines. In basic training, instructors noticed he could diagnose engine problems by sound alone. If a tank motor idled poorly, Eddie could often identify the issue before the maintenance crew even opened the engine compartment. Because of that skill, he was assigned as a driver. Having a mechanic behind the controls meant the tank could be pushed harder without breaking down. Eddie saw his first Tiger tank during fighting near Mortain in August 1944. From nearly 800 yards away, he watched a single Tiger destroy 3 Shermans in less than 2 minutes. The shells tore through American armor effortlessly. Crews burned inside their vehicles. Eddie's tank survived only because his commander ordered a retreat before the Tiger turned its turret toward them. That night, Eddie could not sleep, but he wasn't thinking like a soldier. He was thinking like a mechanic. He replayed the encounter again and again in his mind, how the Tiger moved, how slowly the turret rotated, how the engine sounded when it shifted gears, and gradually a realization formed. The Tiger was powerful, but it was also a machine, and every machine had weaknesses. Eddie started asking questions. How long did it take a Tiger turret to rotate? Nearly a full minute for a complete turn. A Sherman could do it in 15 seconds. How quickly could the Tiger accelerate? Slowly. The heavy tank moved like a freight train. What about terrain? On soft ground, the Tiger struggled. Its enormous weight pushed the tracks deep into mud, and the armor, the front was incredibly thick, but the sides were much weaker, the rear weaker still. Eddie wrote everything down in a small notebook. Observations, measurements, little details only someone obsessed with machines would notice. At first it was just curiosity, but within days that notebook began circulating among other tank crews, and before long it reached the desk of someone who understood its importance. General George Patton. When Eddie Kowalski's notebook reached higher command, the reaction was mixed. Some officers laughed at it. To them it was absurd that a tank driver, a former garage mechanic, was offering tactical insights about the most feared tank in the world. Many of those officers were graduates of West Point. They had studied armored warfare for years. The idea that a corporal's observations could influence strategy felt almost insulting, but not everyone dismissed it. Captain Robert Hayes, Eddie's company commander, saw something valuable in those notes. The observations were practical. They came from men who had actually faced Tigers in combat. Hayes sent the notebook up the chain of command. Eventually, it reached 3rd Army headquarters, and there it landed on the desk of a man who had very little patience for theoretical thinking. General George S. Patton. Patton read Eddie's notes alongside intelligence reports about German heavy armor. The conclusions matched something Patton already believed. The Tiger was not invincible. It was simply a powerful machine with specific strengths and weaknesses. If American tank crews stopped fighting Tigers on German terms, they could win. Patton's staff quickly transformed the mechanic's observations into tactical guidance. Orders were distributed to armored units across the 3rd Army. The instructions were simple. Do not engage Tigers in long-range duels, close the distance, attack from multiple directions, use speed, use terrain, and above all, attack the flanks. A Tiger's side armor was vulnerable. A Sherman's greatest advantage was not its gun, it was mobility. The Sherman was faster, more maneuverable, and far easier to produce in large numbers. Patton's philosophy was brutally straightforward. The Tiger might be stronger, but the Sherman could surround it, and once surrounded, even the most powerful tank could die. Meanwhile, German commanders prepared their defensive trap. The operation was known as Eisenhammer, Iron Hammer. 92 Tiger tanks were positioned across Patton's line of advance. They formed 3 defensive lines stretching across key roads and open terrain. The Tigers were dug into prepared firing positions. Only their turrets were visible above the ground. Their guns pointed directly at the routes American armor would likely use. It was a perfect defensive setup. Any Sherman that appeared would be exposed to long-range fire from multiple Tigers. At those distances, the American tanks would be destroyed before they could even fire back. German planners estimated that Patton's advance could be halted for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks was enough time to stabilize the collapsing front. 2 weeks might save Germany from disaster in the West. Everything depended on those Tigers. American reconnaissance detected unusual German armored activity 3 days before the battle. Scout aircraft reported heavy tanks moving into concealed positions. Ground patrols found fresh Tiger track marks on rural roads. Radio intercepts hinted at large armored units being repositioned. The reports reached Patton's headquarters. Some officers recommended caution, slow the advance, bring up more forces, prepare a careful attack. Patton rejected every suggestion. Stopping was exactly what the Germans wanted. Every hour of delay gave the Tigers more time to prepare. Instead, Patton issued orders that stunned some of his own commanders. Advance faster, split armored units into multiple columns, approach from different directions, and call in every available fighter-bomber squadron for air support. The message sent down to tank companies was clear. Do not stop when you encounter Tigers. Attack them. The engagement began early on a gray September morning. Low fog hung across the countryside. Visibility was limited. For once, the Tigers' long-range guns could not fully dominate the battlefield. That fog became the Americans' greatest ally. Eddie's Sherman advanced along a narrow road bordered by trees and farm fields. Inside the tank, the crew listened to the rumble of the engine and the constant chatter of the radio. Reports were coming in from scouts ahead. Tiger positions identified along a ridge. Multiple heavy tanks, prepared defensive positions. Under older tactics, the American tanks would have advanced straight toward that ridge. The results would have been catastrophic. Instead, the Sherman stopped short. Artillery coordinates were transmitted. Minutes later, American artillery shells began crashing down on the Tiger positions. The shells could not destroy the heavy tanks, but they forced the German crews to close their hatches. When the hatches closed, visibility dropped dramatically. That moment was exactly what Patton's plan depended on. While artillery fell on the ridge, several Sherman companies moved off the main road. They advanced through forests and farm tracks hidden by the fog. Eddie drove his tank through a muddy lane barely wide enough for the Sherman's tracks. Branches scraped against the turret. The crew could barely see 200 yards ahead. Then the trees ended, and the Tigers were suddenly visible, not from the front, from the side. The German tanks were facing the wrong direction. Their guns still aimed toward the main road. Eddie's company opened fire. 5 Shermans fired almost simultaneously. Shells slammed into the side armor of the nearest Tigers. One tank began smoking immediately. Another erupted in flames as ammunition exploded inside. A third Tiger lost its track and became immobilized. The German crews desperately tried to rotate their turrets, but the massive turret took nearly a full minute to turn. The Shermans needed only seconds. Within 90 minutes, the first defensive line was shattered. 11 Tigers were destroyed or disabled. American losses were minimal. The ratio everyone feared had been reversed, but the battle was far from over. Behind that broken line waited more than 60 additional Tiger tanks, and the Germans were already adapting. The destruction of the first Tiger defensive line shocked German commanders. Those heavy tanks were supposed to hold for days. Instead, they were burning wrecks in less than 2 hours. But the battle was not finished. Behind that shattered line waited dozens more Tigers, and now the Germans understood what the Americans were doing. They abandoned their prepared defensive positions. Instead of waiting for the Shermans to attack, the remaining Tigers began moving into forests, villages, and narrow roads where American coordination would be harder. The battlefield suddenly changed. The first ambush came later that afternoon. A column of Shermans rolled cautiously into a small French village. The streets were narrow. Stone houses crowded close to the road. Visibility was terrible. It was the perfect place for a Tiger to hide. The lead Sherman reached the village square. Then a barn exploded outward. A Tiger tank burst through the collapsing wall. The 88mm cannon fired almost instantly. The shell tore through the lead Sherman from front to back. The second Sherman was hit seconds later. The Tiger reversed behind the burning tanks and disappeared down a side street before American tank destroyers could respond. The entire ambush lasted less than a minute. 2 Shermans destroyed. 0 damage to the Tiger. That afternoon, several more ambushes followed. A Tiger hidden behind a farmhouse destroyed another American tank. 2 Tigers created a deadly crossfire at a rural crossroads. Another Tiger fired from a concealed lane and vanished into the woods. By evening, American commanders realized the battle had changed. The Tigers were no longer defending. They were hunting. When the reports reached Patton's headquarters, the general did not order a retreat. He ordered adaptation. If the Germans wanted to fight in villages, Patton would turn those villages into traps. New instructions were issued across the Third Army. Infantry squads moving through towns would carry smoke grenades and portable radios. If a Tiger fired, the infantry would immediately deploy smoke to blind it. Then they would transmit its exact location. Tank destroyers would not enter the village. Instead, they would position themselves at every road leading out. Artillery would mark the exits, and fighter bombers would circle overhead, waiting for any Tiger attempting to escape. It was a coordinated killing system. The moment a Tiger fired, it revealed itself. And once it revealed itself, every American weapon in the area would converge. The first test of the new tactic came at dawn 2 days later in a small French village. Eddie Kowalski's Sherman rolled slowly down the main street. The tank was bait. Everyone inside knew it. If a Tiger was hiding nearby, Eddie's tank would be the target. The tension inside the Sherman was unbearable. The narrow street echoed with the growl of the engine. Then the Tiger fired. The shell screamed past Eddie's turret, missing by only a few feet. Lieutenant Morrison shouted the position over the radio. Infantry threw smoke grenades into the street. White smoke filled the air, blinding the Tiger's crew. Eddie reversed the Sherman out of the kill zone. Moments later, the Tiger tried to escape through a back road, but tank destroyers were already waiting. 2 armor-piercing rounds struck the Tiger's side. The massive tank exploded in flames. Another Tiger attempted to flee north. Fighter bombers spotted it from above. A rocket slammed into the engine deck. The crew abandoned the vehicle seconds before it burned. The trap had worked perfectly. Within days, the tactic spread across the entire Third Army. Every village became a danger zone for German armor. Every Tiger crew knew that firing its gun might reveal its position to artillery, aircraft, and tank destroyers all at once. The results were devastating. In just 72 hours, the massive German armored force collapsed. Of the 92 Tigers deployed to stop Patton's advance, most were destroyed, abandoned, or captured. Only a handful remained operational. The plan that was supposed to stop the Third Army had turned into a disaster. German commanders realized they could not halt Patton with heavy tanks alone. The Iron Hammer had shattered, and Patton's advance continued east toward Germany. The battle proved something important about modern warfare. The Tiger tank was one of the most powerful armored vehicles of its time. Its gun was stronger. Its armor was thicker. In a direct duel, it was usually superior to the American Sherman. But war is rarely decided by individual machines. It is decided by how those machines are used. Patton's forces combined speed, coordination, artillery, air power, and maneuver. They attacked the Tiger's weaknesses instead of its strengths, and the observations of one mechanic helped reveal those weaknesses. Eddie Kowalski never considered himself a strategist. He was simply a man who understood machines. He looked at the Tiger not as a legend, but as a piece of engineering. And every piece of engineering has limits. After the war, Eddie returned home to Cleveland. He worked in factories, raised a family, and rarely spoke about the battles in France. but the tactics developed during that fight influenced armored warfare for decades. Military academies still study those engagements today because they demonstrate a timeless truth. Technology alone does not win wars. Understanding does. Sometimes the most important insight does not come from a general. Sometimes it comes from a mechanic with a notebook and the courage to trust what he sees. The Tiger tank was supposed to stop Patton's army. 92 of them were sent to do exactly that. But fewer than 5 were still operational when the battle ended. Not because the Sherman was stronger, but because soldiers learned how to fight smarter. So here is something worth thinking about. If you had been in Eddie Kowalski's Sherman that day, knowing the Tiger's gun could destroy your tank from more than a mile away, would you have charged forward anyway? Or would you have turned around? Let me know your answer in the comments. And if you enjoy cinematic history stories like this one, make sure to subscribe for more untold moments from World War II.